Suraj, who orchestrates another set piece and flicks it to Martial! Who squeezed it through Ederson and established a United lead on Derby Day! Another way. James towards Rashford! Free! In a flash! Here for Pogba, supported now by Daniel James, whose dream comes true. How about it? Lap it up, boy! There's corner pulled back for Pogba! United run the business. Boy, they run the business. What a splendid Manchester United breakthrough goal. This resurgent red storm blows up again. Quite a side when they're flying, and they're flying again now.
Hello and welcome back to the United Devils podcast. Today we are discussing United's continued unbeaten run with a 0-0 draw at Old Trafford against Chelsea, followed by an emphatic 5-0 win in the Champions League against RB Leipzig. With me today, I welcome back Suraj and Arion, and we'll talk about those two games. And of course, we've got to start with the rather dull affair against Chelsea in the league on Saturday night. United obviously went into the game in good form, having won back-to-back games against Newcastle and PSG, and looked to try and transform that form away into home form, obviously winless in the league so far this season. And it was, I think it's fair to say, it's a dull affair. It was boring. United managing 3 big chances on the Chelsea goal, and Mendy was a match to all 3. Arion, we'll just go over the first half for you. I mean, do you think it was just about both teams not wanting to lose the game and they both played rather conservatively? Do you think that was really the problem?
It definitely looked like it, and I think that I understood for the start of the game, like, we still don't really know how Chelsea want to play with the amount of players that they brought in. We haven't really seen, that nailed down pattern of play in all of their games. Like, sometimes they go out there, they brush somebody away, then they concede first 3 to West Brom and they have to claw back, and it's like, we didn't really know. So I kind of got that the start of that game might be a bit of a feeling out process, but I did think that we gave them too much respect in that first half. Once it got into the latter stages and we kind of saw how they want to play, we didn't adapt quick enough. And then once United did adapt in that second half, it was too late. So I do think that on the overall, kind of in hindsight, like, you're always smarter in hindsight, I do think that maybe that little switch in gear, maybe from third into fourth, could have happened a little bit quicker and not after halftime, because I did feel like that game was there for the taking. Like, we made a Chelsea team that spent so much money on attacking players kind of happy with going away with a draw, because they really had no answers for how United set up.
Yeah, very true. I think one thing that has been said by a lot of United fans, but not a lot by anyone else, is the fact that Chelsea's £200 million lineup managed 1 shot on target. And I think that was Reece James from that set piece. So, I mean, it really says a lot about how United defended really well. However, there was one contentious moment that was brought up a lot of times by certainly Sky Sports. Suraj, that tussle with Maguire and Azpilicueta. What was your take on that? Do you think that we were lucky to get away with maybe the 1 point there?
Yeah, I think, when you draw at home, it always feels like 2 points dropped over 1 point gained. If we draw at Stamford Bridge, I'd probably be happy with the point, but not at home. In hindsight, yeah, that was a penalty, and we'd be all over it if it was our guy getting a chokehold in their box. So I think Maguire got away with it, and I heard some referee during halftime or full time, he was saying that because it was in the run of play and the referee got a clear view of it, they decided not to go to VAR. Something that it doesn't really make sense anymore. The whole VAR rules, to me, doesn't really make any sense. So yeah, that could have been a penalty. But even the penalty aside, we should have at least scored 2 goals against that Chelsea defense. If Southampton and West Brom can score 3 goals each, then I think this United attack should be scoring at least 2. And since it was a home game, and like Arion said, they were there for the taking. we should have been more attacking over there.
Mm.
But I think what happened exactly was, if you look at the games before the international break, we conceded, I think, 11 goals in 3 Premier League games, which is horrific. So I think during the international break, Solskjaer must have just thought, okay, we're not going to be conceding any more goals. That's priority number one. And then we'll go on an attack. So the whole playing McTominay and Fred in midfield was pretty much just to make sure we don't concede anymore. Solskjaer went back to the basics. And I think uh, he's using these clean sheets to build on in the future.
I absolutely agree. I think obviously that midfield pivot of Fred and McTominay was something that raised eyebrows against Newcastle, but it turned out to be fantastic. It was fantastic against PSG, and against Chelsea, it stopped Chelsea's counter-attacks, which is how they were playing, looking to play, obviously, with that back five. But obviously the defensive line was only had one change, and we'll talk about that now. Victor Lindelof obviously came in for Eric Bailly after the Tottenham debacle, and he obviously lost his position in that match after starting the first 2 Premier League games of the season. But he seems to have turned a corner after some really good performances against certainly PSG and Chelsea, and yesterday against Leipzig. Arion, do you think we were too early to judge him at the start of the season, or do you think it was rightful criticism and he's just turned a corner?
I think now, again, hindsight might be the word of this podcast, because now I think after that start of the season, everybody was being judged. And then I think a lot of people, including me, at some points forgot that United didn't have preseason. And I think now that they have some more time, they have more games under their belt, you're starting to kind of see those players that we know what they're capable of at their best, starting to come back to their best again. You know, that sharpness at 2 weeks can make a huge difference. And as we've seen, even from that Spurs game right into the Newcastle game, it made a ton of difference for Lindelof himself. So I do think that just because the defense was conceding so many goals and so many silly goals, like that Spurs game, it was 6-1 because United wanted it to be 6-1. Like, it didn't have to be if they just stayed focused and didn't concede so many silly goals. So I do think that that's why they were so under fire, because it was just, I don't want to like excuse it by the lack of preseason, because a lot of other teams had it. But like you see, the likes of Liverpool and City have also struggled a little bit without that. So I think it's just because we're United fans and the defense was so bad. It's just what we keep in on, and we were trying to look for somebody for a scapegoat, maybe, in a way, and we felt like, oh, buying in for Lindelof would fix everything, and it didn't. So now I think it's good to see that back line just start to look more compact again, like it did at times last season, especially when United went on those winning runs and unbeaten runs. And I do think that what Suraj said about Fred and McTominay coming in, and Solskjaer just saying, like, we're not going to concede, and then if we don't concede, then obviously we have the attack there to go forward and score. And I do think the likes Dan James is one of those defensive kind of moves in the first 11 too, because especially with Luke Shaw kind of looking a little suspect to start the season and that side being kind of exposed for United, he is somebody who will always track back. He might not be satisfying going forward, but he gives you that cover down that left-hand side. And especially in that Chelsea game, I felt that was one of the reasons why he started. It ended up costing us because we weren't able to score in the end, but they didn't concede either. And Chelsea didn't really expose that Luke Shaw side at all. So I do think that was a good kind of spell now of games to use that as a foundation, not to concede goals, to get that defense confident again. And now it's time to start tinkering with the formations like he has been doing, and with the different lineups that he has available.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there when it said it, because it was on that right hand side was Christian Pulisic, Reece James, and then Cesar Azpilicueta, who does always come forward almost like a right back at times in that back three. So I think that's very true. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't Ole Gunnar Solskjaer call Dan James the best defensive winger in the world? Which I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but fair enough. You know, it seems to have worked. But you're right. I mean, we changed the formation in that game when we needed to go for the win, when the game was there for the taking, something that we did do in PSG, and something we started the game against Leipzig with, which I'll go into now. Of course, United knew they were going to come up against another back five, a slightly weakened Leipzig side without the likes of Nordi Mukiele and Sabitzer, and I think Klosterman too. But still a very energetic and dangerous side that are still topping the Bundesliga as we speak. They obviously it started fantastically. The game was electric, both teams wanting to press high and attack and cause problems, and it turned out United were going to do that from the beginning, and obviously found the opening goal through Mason Greenwood with a fantastic bit of play in between the whole diamond, and then Pogba finding Greenwood expertly and showing really how he can play in both attack and defence in that game. I thought that was a really disciplined performance from him specifically. But then United kept going for it, couldn't quite find the lead until they brought on the substitutes, which was quite early, really. I think it was just under the hour mark to bring on, I think, Bruno Fernandes. No, it wasn't. It was, Scott McTominay and Marcus Rashford. And, of course, Rashford does what Rashford always does, and he ruined Leipzig, really, with a hat-trick and in between a goal from Martial from the spot. And it was almost a perfect performance from Manchester United. I think the one thing might have made it perfect was a Van de Beek or Cavani goal. But other than that, it reminded me of that game against Roma where United lost the away leg and rocked up to Old Trafford and smacked 6 or 7 past them. A really vintage performance. Suraj, I mean, it was everything we didn't expect last week and more, really, wasn't it? No one expected that, did they?
Yeah, for sure. When the draws were first made and we were put in the same group as PSG and Leipzig, I was one of the first people to say that PSG, we can still beat them because if you cut out Neymar and Mbappe and we just block their midfield, then we can beat them. But Leipzig are a very technical side and they play with a lot of tactics and they never rely on individual brilliance. That's why even after losing Timo Werner, they've done so well without actually buying a expensive replacement. So I thought this Leipzig game was, I'm pretty sure we were going to lose this home and away, and I was hoping we'd get points against PSG. So, but we played so well. We played their game against them, basically. So Leipzig's press is one of the best I've ever seen, in the sense that their press isn't exactly rash. They gang up on a player while cutting out the channels. And we did that to them. And we did it absolutely perfectly. And Fred was there to collect all the loose balls. And I think we really need to appreciate Fred's performance against Leipzig because he did so well. And not only did he collect, but he was playing it to Martial consistently. And he played it to Martial, and Martial made that brilliant run, but there's no one to tap it in. And then he was the one who played the ball to Pogba, who assisted Greenwood's opening goal. So we did really well to score and keep it at 1-0. 5-0 was just a bonus. We didn't play for a final. We played for a 2-0. The final was because after 2-0, they lost. They gave up. They pretty much gave up. Have you ever seen Upamecano just let someone dribble past him? Never. They just gave up after 2-0. And after that, it could have been 6. It could have been 4. So the first 75 minutes were really crucial, and we did that perfectly and we got the result.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I just totally bossed them, and a really, really lovely moment for Marcus Rashford, his first senior hat trick, and I saw the nice mirroring from one tweet, which was that Martial had his first senior hat trick assisted by Rashford, and Rashford had his first senior hat trick assisted by Martial, and also really touching moment with the penalty as well, where Rashford could have had his hat trick, but he gave it to Martial so he could open his account. And you just see that all that bonds, like almost brotherhood within the squad and friendship, and it's a proper team now. And I think you have to give a lot of credit to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to get that there. And of course, Arion, we've often been rather critical at times of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's tactical displays, but he's beaten 2 of the best teams in Europe, a semi-finalist and a finalist in the Champions League. And not to mention, we thought this run starting from the Newcastle away game was going to be very, very difficult, and we're on the precipice of being unbeaten in all of them. What do you think this says about our manager and more the naysayers who've been wanting him out for about 2 years?
I mean, yeah, I think when I think I was on the podcast here just after that Spurs game, and I was saying that that Newcastle game is going to be probably the biggest one of the season, because how does he go and pick up this team afterwards and get them to respond after being, humiliated at home in a way, and just I don't know what went on behind the scenes, how much of an input he had in that, and how much it was the players themselves who kind of just said, right, we cannot play like this, we have to come back. But I think it's a mixture of both. And just how they responded in that Newcastle game, and now moving forward, it's fantastic. And I think it's just the first question going into that Newcastle game was, has he lost the dressing room, or do they still want to play for him? And the team that he picked for that Newcastle game and how they responded and how they won that game for him kind of shows you exactly what you need to know. Is just that I think that Spurs game was just a blip, and maybe a reality check that was needed, that showed that no, you cannot ever get complacent in the Premier League and playing for United. Like the cliche thing that Solskjaer always says is that you always have to outwork, but that's true. Even as a United player, you can never really take a day off because you'll get punished. So I do think that was a huge part of it. But then the tactical aspect of it, how he went through 3 different formations and setups in 4 games, like he's playing FIFA, and they all worked as well. It's kind of impressive, but it just shows you that with the backing and with having a deeper squad now, that against Leipzig, like Suraj said, after 65 minutes, we were 1-0 up and we needed something different. And he brings on Cavani for Pogba, Rashford for Greenwood, and Fernandes for Van de Beek. And look what difference it makes when it's no longer Pereira for Lingard and all of that. It's sad to say, but it's like once you invest, like you kind of see the fruits of that investment when you can still bring on first team quality players that deep into a game, and then you see what happens. It goes from a 1-0 to a 5-0, albeit Leipzig did give up eventually. I did feel that too, but they buried them. They put them to the sword. They killed off a game finally. So it was very kind of satisfying to see, and it just goes to show that I think he will still be hated on. The first time he slips up again, they will say that he has no tactics, even though he just beat other teams like Tuchel's side and Nagelsmann's side by utilizing tactics very smartly. But I guess we're just going to have to live with that, and the people that do back him, because I think he's shown time and time again that he does deserve it. He does deserve the time, because chopping and changing all the time, especially with this board that are so hesitant to back managers that get into the Champions League, it's just not going to change anything. So I think we have to be in it for the long run, and I think it's looking like it might pay off. That the positive signs are more than negatives at the moment, I think, especially with how they've picked up after this international break.
It's sort of points like this, the transitions that United are going through in this season, that make me think if only we could have had one of those all or nothing documentary this season, it would have been something special. But I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think the fact that we just find ways to win, and we found a fantastic performance. And obviously the squad is much better now with the players that Solskjaer has brought in. One of them that obviously started, his only his 3rd start for United, Donny van de Beek. He was fantastic. He only lasted 65, 67 minutes, but a fantastic performance from him. His movement off and on the ball, his passing, his vision, it was all fantastic. And I think it really shows how important squad rotation is, because I think if we played Bruno for the full 90, which is what we probably would have done last season, he would have been knackered for the Arsenal game, and we don't know how that's going to go. But the fact that we can do a straight swap for him just shows how important Van de Beek is in the team. Suraj, would you say that, we'll talk about another position there, is that Matic or McTominay as part of our poll? You were slightly hesitant for this one because we've talked a lot about this anchor position, but obviously Matic did look a little bit rusty against Leipzig, got that yellow card controversially, could have even got a second one for a similar challenge, but he doesn't have that energy or yard of pace that McTominay probably has. Do you think maybe for Arsenal, if we are going to play in a similar formation, you'd have McTominay in that anchor role?
So here's where I'm on in the whole center defensive midfielder position. It's I'm really glad we have Matic and McTominay in our squad, because when we play a side like, say, RB Leipzig, that are very tactical and you need to really read the game well. So I think over there, Matic does a very good job because he's more experienced and he's more aware. Whereas if you're playing a team like PSG, where you just need to stop Mbappe and Neymar no matter what, over there you need a guy like McTominay who just slides in, doesn't really care about anything else, just slides in. And when McTominay came on later in the Leipzig game, you saw immediately he got Sabitzer down, and he has that destructive nature to his game. Uh, in terms of who I'd play against Arsenal, I'd probably go for, oh, that's a tough one, but I think I'd go for McTominay because he got a nice rest against Leipzig. So now he's ready to go. And maybe we could play Matic and McTominay and give Fred a rest, because Fred's been playing a long time. But if I had to choose one of the two, I'd go for McTominay, because Arsenal are really quick on the counters. They have some really fast players. They've Bukayo Saka, and if Nicola Pepe plays, he's there. And here's one thing. I hope it doesn't come back to bite me, but Arsenal don't have a lot of creativity on the center of the pitch. They only have Ceballos and one guy who sits on the bench, who's not even part of the Premier League team. So
he's part of the social media promotion, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a PR agent now.
Yeah.
So apart from these two, they don't have any creativity. So you don't need anyone to really cut the channels out, because as soon as they get the ball into our half, it's going either to Aubameyang or it's going to Pepe. You don't need to worry about that. So in that situation, I'd go for McTominay, who just goes in, tackles, wins the ball, no matter what the situation is, and passes it forward.
Thank you. Yeah. Would you agree with that, Arion?
Yeah, I actually think that for games like that with teams that have runners, I really like the formations that can have both Fred and McTominay on, because I think similar to the PSG game, you know what they're going to do. They're going to get the ball up the field and into two of their creators, which is, in PSG's case, it was Neymar and Mbappe. And McTominay and Fred were on them straight away. And whether you need to foul, whether you're going to just shadow shield them, make them pass the ball backwards and just give the ball to somebody else, that's what you need. And I think that you can rely on both Fred and McTominay more for that than you can Matic in those kind of games. But I also agree with what Suraj said about the Leipzig game, where they press you and you need a cooler head in there to keep that ball and play a smart ball. I think Matic fits because he maybe doesn't have to run as much, but when he gets on the ball, he has to be the one to make the smart pass that I think McTominay is still learning, that smart kind of side of his game, because he can be rash at times. And I think we love him for that, because when he came on for Matic, first thing he does is he goes straight into a tackle, and that's kind of his side of his game. That is that's showing. And I do think, just kind of looking at the formation that I'd like United to play overall in the Arsenal game, like I said, I really like either the diamond or that 5 at the back, where you can have both of them in there, because they give you that balance of work. And Fred also is a bit more progressive in bringing the ball forward. And then with the diamond, you can have both Bruno and Pogba there, say, if you want to start them. And it kind of fits. It doesn't go unbalanced like it looked against Spurs, where you had Pogba playing in that double pivot alongside Matic. Because you have Fred and McTominay, who are there to do roles, to work hard and to never stop running. And then you have the likes of Pogba and Bruno ahead of them, if they choose the diamond, to kind of create. And I think you will need more than one creative source against an Arsenal that will play 5 at the back. So I think if Solskjaer liked how that diamond performed against Leipzig, which I'm assuming he did because of the result, obviously, and the clean sheet, I think I would like to see him go for that. And Pogba came off against Leipzig too, so maybe that was in order to give him time to start again. And I think this is just another good opportunity to test whether Bruno and Pogba can play together. Because in that diamond, when Fred occupies maybe that right side, and McTominay is the one just in front of the back four, then you have Pogba playing off the left, where he loves to operate. And then you have Bruno just given the free roam role ahead of all of them. And then the 2 split strikers, which probably will be Greenwood and Rashford. I think that's a very good recipe to stretch that Arsenal defence and have just enough creativity there to provide. Because I think Bruno by himself, like we saw against Chelsea, he might struggle to just kind of break that down thoroughly when he doesn't have somebody by his side to rely on to kind of interplay with.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We'll go on to the Arsenal game now. I think you're absolutely right. I think we need two more attack-minded midfielders and two more balanced midfielders. I think whether it's McTominay or Fred in that pivot, I think McTominay might go on the right-hand side to deal with Aubameyang in a sort of a pincer move with Wan-Bissaka to stop Tierney as well. And I think he could do that, and Fred moves along. It's something that I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been Mark Goldbridge was demonstrating. And I normally can't stand the guy, but he was bang on there with it. And essentially you just shift the midfield to one side to stop those wing backs from getting forward. And then when it's on the right-hand side, you go there, because they don't have what Liverpool possess, in that they don't have their fullbacks that can switch the play that efficiently and can essentially get away from the high press. So I think it would work perfectly there, that diamond formation. You could even put, if you wanted to go all gung-ho, you could put Donny van der Beek as that right central midfielder and have him flit in between him and Fernandes in that number 10 or almost false 9 role. But I think maybe Solskjaer might go for the pragmatic one of McTominay and Fred, which works so fantastically. One thing you said, Suraj, is that Arsenal, they don't have a lot of creativity in their midfield other than Ceballos and the Ghost, but I think the fact is that I'm not worried about them in attack within that midfield, because I think if you have Fred and McTominay in there, it will it snuffed out better attacking midfielders than Ceballos and Xhaka. It snuffed out Havertz and Ziyech and Di Maria and Draxler and Neymar when he came more centrally. But I mean, would you agree with Arion's formation? Would you say that diamond has to keep in the formation? Or do you think that maybe if we do that, Arteta will be able to tactically maneuver his side away from it?
I think I agree with Arion. We've got to keep the diamond. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but our passing has been really slick of late. We've been able to make those really nice, fine passes, and you see them in the training videos. Also, these guys are doing rondos continuously. So I think that's really improved the close passing, because against Leipzig, I kept thinking, okay, now they're going to press and they're going to dispossess, but they don't. They manage to keep the ball somehow, and I think Pogba and Van de Beek were a huge part of that. So Arsenal are a side who is just going to sit back comfortably, and they're going to wait to break us during the counters. They'll rely on Aubameyang and Pepe or Willian, whoever, to do the job. I think Willian's going to start. But yeah, so in that situation, we need somebody like Pogba and Van de Beek to really get in their technical ability. Van de Beek will mostly, he's pretty much our Thomas Müller, so he can really look for space in those pockets and really expand their defense. So I think breaking apart Arsenal is going to be really difficult, because they defend in a very compact manner. And if you'd seen the Man City versus Arsenal game, they did a really good job at stopping City, except for that one pass that Mahrez made that Aguero capitalized on, and they scored. Apart from that, I think they gave City just one more opportunity, and that got saved. So it won't be as easy as a lot of fans are making it out to be, but I think the diamond is the way to go for it. Maybe bring Bruno on, because this happened against PSG and against Leipzig. As it is, the midfielders and the defenders of the opposing team are tired of facing Pogba and whoever, Fred or whoever. And then in the 60th minute, they look at the touchline and you're getting on Bruno and you're getting on Van de Beek. So it really messes with their mind. Probably does. I mean, it has to, because you were having trouble dealing with two of these guys. Now there are four of these guys. So I think something similar against Arsenal. If we get a nice, easy goal in the first half, be comfortable. And then the second half, we can really break them apart with all these guys on the pitch.
So how would you start the team? How would you line up Manchester United?
I think I'd go for pretty much the same lineup, except in the midfield, I'd go for Matic, McTominay, Pogba, and Van de Beek. Give Bruno another rest, have him all ready for Istanbul, which I'll get to in a bit. And up front, I'd give Cavani his start, and I'd go for Rashford.
Thank
So
you. Yeah.
Martial's not eligible, and Greenwood.
Yeah.
I'll give him a rest.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, giving Bruno a rest is obviously a big call for 2 games in a row. But would you agree with that, Arion?
I agree with pretty much all of it except for the I think for Matic, I would still play Fred. I saw Solskjaer talk about him in the press conference, and he said that he covers so much ground and he still manages to recover and be fully fit to start again. So I think when he's in this form, you have to just keep playing him. Rest him for Istanbul, I think, which is technically the easiest game of the group. And you play him in this game, which is kind of a must-win in the Premier League because we need to start catching up. So I think I would put in Fred in there, bring McTominay back in, and then I would start Pogba because I thought he looked great playing off that left-hand side against Leipzig. And I think when he looked so good against a team that's so organized and well-coached, I do think that he could look even better against an Arsenal side that, I'm not saying they're not well coached, but I just don't think it's the same level as a maybe Julian Nagelsmann side. And their defense, I think, will be more susceptible to making mistakes and giving Pogba pockets of space than that Leipzig defense did for that first 65 minutes. So I would keep Pogba there, and I would bring Bruno in for Van de Beek. I think if he doesn't start against Leipzig, that means he is rested for Arsenal. I think he comes straight back in. And then, it's the thing for me, like, I'm not sure how we want to, obviously Rashford starts, and then it's either Cavani or Greenwood. I thought Greenwood did great. I was so surprised when I saw him make that run in through Upamecano to latch onto that Pogba pass. I don't think I've seen him do that before. Like, I'm so used to him picking the ball up on the right and cutting in or going on his right and scoring. But he just shows another dimension to his game that they're obviously working on him becoming the number 9 one day, because that was excellent. And he kind of just shrugged off Upamecano like he was nothing and finished off so greatly. So I do think that with him getting 60 minutes and he might get to start and Cavani will be slowly getting built up. But again, if we want that option of somebody more physical, a bit of a presence to play across those 3 centre-backs that Arsenal will have, he's there. But I would go with Greenwood and Rashford up front, I think, because they're just quicker and kind of a bit more witty, I think, when it comes to Premier League to stretch out that Arsenal defence and give them more problems. And then you have Cavani there in the wings waiting to come on and show you another dimension later on in the game.
Yeah, I think I agree with your lineup, Arion. I think Fred, McTominay, Pogba, and Bruno in that pivot. I think if Bruno didn't start against Leipzig, I think he does start even as well as Van de Beek did. I know Solskjaer said that he'll play players not on who he thinks is his best lineup, but on he'll reward them for their good performances. And while Van de Beek had a good performance, Bruno also had a very good performance too. So it's honestly a coin toss, but I think he'll keep with Bruno for the Premier League for now. Otherwise, how are we going to hop, skip, and jump our way to the Premier League title? You never know. But I think that, and I think if it's Cavani, I could see that because he could bully that Arsenal back 3 a lot in the air. I don't see many that are very dominant now. Socrates is not part of the main side. I think it's Holding, Tierney, and David Luiz are the main back 3, if I'm not mistaken.
It's Gabriel, Luiz, and Tierney.
Gabriel's there.
It's Gabriel.
But Luiz picked up an injury.
Oh, has he?
Yeah, in the last game he picked up an injury. We're not sure if it's pretty much Luiz got injured. Mustafi made the mistake, and Vardy scored, and that's how they lost their game.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I'll be honest. Yeah. But if it's Mustafi, then absolutely Cavani, because I mean he'd just rinse them. But I think the fact is that Greenwood looked a little bit rusty. So after about 60 minutes, that might have been the right time, right call, and then bring on Rashford, who obviously ruined Leipzig. So I could see it being either way. Cavani or Greenwood, I think, would be fantastic. But runners have obviously caused Arsenal problems. So there we go. How about scorelines then? Suraj, how are you thinking? Do you think another clean sheet at home?
I was just talking to my friends the other day, and I was telling them that United's biggest threat is United, because in the last 4 games we've conceded 2 goals and both own goals. So I think we will keep a clean sheet, because Solskjaer has done really well to steady the ship after that horrific start in the beginning. So I think if we go and then we concede to Arsenal, it kind of ruins the whole thing. So I think we're going to keep a clean sheet, because defense has clearly been our first priority throughout the game. even against Leipzig. There was this one moment where Matic got the ball at the end of a corner, and he had passing opportunities, but his first aim was he just ran as far away from the goal as possible. So I think I'll go for 2-0.
Yeah.
United.
Well, I mean, hopefully looking for. I mean, it would be 3 clean sheets in a row at home. I think for the first time in 2 years. So it's a big statement if that could happen. Arion, would you agree with Suraj's scoreline?
I do agree with the scoreline, but first of all, I want to say that I agree even more with the fact that United are their own biggest enemies, and like going into a game against an Arsenal team who, even though they're ahead of us in the league, they, especially since the international break, they just haven't looked that good. They have to just go into it like any other game and not think that they're entitled to get a win here, like they so often like to do, especially in the early stages of a game. Like we've seen this Arsenal side struggle when they're pressed. They like to go long when they don't like to try to get out of a press. They just go long. And I think United are physical enough in midfield and with Maguire there to win aerial duels and just get the ball back and pile them in their own half eventually as the game goes on. So I do think if United played their game like they have with that high press, and we've seen that we've made teams that are better than Arsenal at getting out of pressing uncomfortable and won the ball high up the pitch and get chances from it. So I do think that as long as the mindset is the same, no matter what formation comes out, I do think they can be hurt. And this game can be, I think, maybe the least nerve-wracking of all of the ones that we've just had. But it's just about the application. Like that's the one thing that worries me about this side is them staying concentrated and just not letting that complacency creep in. So that's on Solskjaer, I think, to kind of go in and dig in right before the game and just let them know that we're on a good run, but we're still 15th in the league. So it's time to start climbing. And I do agree with the scoreline. I was going to say 2-0 as well. I do think that we just have enough. We have answers for what Arsenal can ask of us. Yeah, so physically, I think with physicality and how Arsenal struggle to escape the press and resort to going long, they don't really worry me that much. I think individual moments of brilliance are what worries me the most, I think, about this side. But Wan-Bissaka has looked back to his best recently. The tackling is crisp again. He doesn't get caught out of position, and he's very good at bringing the ball out too. So I'm not worried about this side. And Luke Shaw has looked better recently, and he's getting more cover with those new formations too, where he's not getting isolated. So I do think that United, on paper and just looking at the forms, have everything and enough, more than enough there to contain this Arsenal side and finally get that win in the league at home. So, but I'm going to go with the same prediction as Serge. I think a 2-0, maybe one in the first half and one in the second to kind of kill the game off is what I'm thinking.
Mm. Of course, I think I agree with both of you there. I think 2-0 seems reasonable. I think if we were thinking of, 4 or 5-0 humbling for Arsenal, I don't see it happening unless something magical happens again at Old Trafford for 2 games in a row. The one thing I would say is that, I mean, every time we've played Arsenal in the last 4 years, we've looked like we're going in with good form, going in. I think last season it was on the back of beating Leicester, and then those back-to-back wins in December, and we drew and lost those games. The season before, we just had the Paris comeback and done, I think, quite well, rebuilding success with Jose Mourinho. I think we just come back from beating Juventus 2-1. And of course, in all 4 of those games, United were winless. They haven't won against Arsenal since Fellaini's winner in 2018, which was Wenger's last game, which feels like ages ago, and really kind of emphasizes how much we need that win, because the win would take us above Arsenal in the league, and then potentially we could be creeping closer to the top 4 with a crucial game against Everton the week after. But about this game, I think 2-0 makes sense. I think it's there for the taking. We've just got to put on a performance like we did yesterday, and it's certainly well within United to do that. It's just about getting it done, really. We'll move on to the Champions League again, and Basaksehir, like you said, travelling to Istanbul is no easy feat. It certainly has been made easier without the crowds in, because obviously that atmosphere would be electric based on what happened with Fenerbahce a couple years ago. But when it comes to Istanbul, you know what they're going to do. They're going to sit back, cause the attacking players problems, and try and counter. They've got fantastic players up front. They've got Visca, who's their most dangerous player, and their target man can cause a lot of problems. He did cause Kimpembe a couple of issues in the PSG game. So how would you line up, Suraj, of course, with the big Everton game coming up the Sunday after? It certainly does mean that we can refresh the team a little bit.
So first up, I think getting 6 points home and away to Istanbul is extremely important. I was doing some math today and I figured that if we beat them home and away and we get even 1 point against PSG and Leipzig combined, we're comfortably through. So we absolutely have to beat Istanbul. And it's very, very Manchester United to beat Leipzig and PSG and then go and lose to Istanbul. So that's something we need to avoid and not take lightly at all. So we need to send in a proper first team over there. I think we'll have to look at this game retrospectively. Who does Solskjaer want to start for the Everton game? And suppose, for example, Van de Beek's not in his plans, then he can send him over to Istanbul to get a result over there. So I'm not exactly sure how we should line up. I think we should line up. We should be ready for a very frustrating game. That's why I feel like I'm saying this a lot, but I think Donny Van de Beek is the solution to our problem because I watched the game against PSG and they were giving no space to Mbappe. Mbappe got past one defender, the second defender came sliding and he got past that guy. And then a third defender came in and just wiped him out. And they made just 2 mistakes and PSG scored on both those occasions. So, but largely they were frustrating PSG a lot and Neymar got injured in the 20th minute. So I think we should be ready for a very frustrating night because they're just going to put a lot of men behind the ball and they've got experience over there. Skrtel's faced us multiple times. Rafael was one of our own pretty much. So these guys know how we're going to play. And I think we'll have to send either one of Bruno or Pogba to start because we need some creative spark who stands a little outside the box and visualizes the game and isn't one who actively runs at the defenders. We'll need someone to break the lines. So I think Mason Greenwood's going to be important over there and Donny van de Beek, and I'll go for Anthony Martial up front. So Martial was pretty much the Leipzig lineup.
So you wouldn't play Henderson in this game?
Well, that's another tough one. Maybe Henderson can get a start. I was thinking of starting Henderson at Istanbul at home and West Brom at home or away. I think we play West Brom at home after the Everton game. So
you're right. Yeah.
Play Dean Henderson there. That's actually a good question. So David De Gea gets the rest. Yeah, that wouldn't be a very bad option because, again, from what I saw in the PSG game, PSG defense weren't really tested a lot apart from the few blocks that they had to make. So I think this could be a nice game for Henderson to ease into the Champions League pressure. But I wouldn't start him Istanbul away. I'd start him Istanbul at home to at least give him that comfortable surroundings of Old Trafford. So I wouldn't go for Henderson.
Thank you. Yeah,
that's a close call, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I think he showed like away to Brighton and away to Luton. I mean, obviously, slightly different surroundings to Istanbul, of course. But I mean, it's certainly one that could be on Ollie's mind. Would you agree to mostly keep things constant against Basaksehir?
I think it might be one of those games where I think we'll see maybe the most rotation, which that was the case against Leipzig. There was quite a few changes, and I think that might be the case again here. I was actually personally thinking that this will be the game that Henderson will get the start because he hasn't played in a while now, and he's missed the first two Champions League games. I'm assuming that he was told that he will get some sort of big games as part of the rotation to kind of give him a chance to audition for the position, because right now De Gea is looking very solid, and you're just looking like, well, he's not going to play in the league anytime soon. So you have to find those other competitions. And I think a game against Istanbul, maybe even both of them, are a good opportunity for him to come in and stake his claim and give De Gea maybe a well-deserved breather as well. So I do think that will be the case. And then I think for the Arsenal game, the back five, which is obviously included De Gea and the four defenders, I think that will stay the same as we saw against Leipzig, because there's no really need to chop and change at the moment. So I would see Axel coming back in Istanbul for one of Maguire or Lindelof. And then, I think in the midfield, the rotation that we saw against Leipzig, I do agree with Suraj that I would like either Pogba or Bruno there. And then perhaps maybe, so then you could have Van de Beek in the 10 again, and then maybe Matic and Fred or Matic and McTominay. I do think that midfield was good. It just gives you that perfect balance and rotation too, because other players can rest. And I think that might also be the game in which Cavani starts for the first time, because I do think that Greenwood and Rashford will get the nod on Sunday. So I think that might be his first game alongside Martial as well. So Rashford can get a breather. So I do feel like we will see probably the most rotated side. Hopefully Telles will be back for that one, so he can be in contention too. But I'm not sure how much longer he has to quarantine for and all that stuff, and then get back to that match rhythm. But I do think that might be a game for him too. But it's definitely, after you get 6 points from PSG and Leipzig, you kind of feel like, even though I do agree that we do need a win in both of them, and then you're pretty much sailing. But it does give you that room for maneuver with so many fixtures.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I think. Oh, sorry, what were you going to say?
One name we're missing in midfield is Juan Mata. I think he can do a job against Istanbul.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, he was what you were talking about just before. We need that player that's not going to run at players, but be that creative spark to break the line. I think he could perfectly do that. I've a mix of both really there, because I'd like to keep Wan-Bissaka there because I think he's been fantastic and I think we need him, and I'd like to see either Lindelof or Maguire, whoever's looked more jaded in the Arsenal game, to come out for Tuanzebe, because I think he wants another run out, but I think maybe a less intense run out than the PSG game. But and I could also see Brandon Williams coming in for sure, who will probably be have been battered all game long against Arsenal, because their right hand side is still quite dominant, and I think he'll have a well deserved rest. If Telles isn't available, then it will be Williams. Again, you can see things like Matic coming in, and certainly Van der Beek and Mata operating in maybe in a diamond formation, because it'd be an interesting change of pace to have Mata as an actual number 10 instead of the right winger we've seen over the last few seasons really. But I could see Cavani and Martial starting as a front two, and certainly causing a lot of problems with the variation they offer. But we'll go on to the predicted score. Suraj, are you expecting another clean sheet, another comfortable victory in the Champions League?
No, because we play Arsenal Sunday and then we play Istanbul Wednesday. So I think that's a very, very small gap. I mean, it's not like they could have shifted our day behind. So I think a 1-0 win for United, hopefully.
Would you agree with that, Arion?
Yeah, I do think I didn't watch the full game against PSG. I watched the extended highlights, and I did see that they do play very low, which obviously is testing for United. But I do like the way this diamond, with the amount of options that United have when it comes to central players, it's perfect for the likes of Pogba and Juan Mata as well, because you can be narrow and amongst it all the time. So it's going to be interesting to see how it's rotated and how United approach that game, because that could possibly be one of those games where you maybe only need one pivot defensively, and then you can play even 3 more creative midfielders ahead of him. So I do think that it's going to be an interesting one, but I don't think it's going to be by any means easy. And I don't think we're going to be going into that one looking for style points. You just want to go in there, get the win, and get back to England and prepare for Everton. So I do think that with how little they troubled a PSG defense that I think is more fragile than a United one at the moment, there is potential there for a clean sheet. But just to switch it up, I'll go for a 2-1.
Yeah, I mean, I think they will cause some problems perhaps on the counter. It depends on how focused the United side are. They could just be going in thinking that, we've got big wins against Leipzig and whatever happens against Arsenal, and we can just have a walk in the park in Turkey. But it's about the mentality, and hopefully United can have that the mentality that drove them to these great results since the international break. So I might go for a 2-0. It will obviously be one for about 85 minutes, and then we'll get a second one very late on, but we'll have to see. Obviously, it's going to be a big week if United can get those results. It will be 9 points out of a potential 9 in the Champions League. They can get, I think, as high as the top 6, which is at least in the top 10, which is something we can't say for, I'm pretty sure all season long we've not been in the top half of the Premier League. So it's a big step forward, really, but I mean, it's still plenty more to go through. That's all we have time for this week. Thank you for listening, and thank you to both Suraj and Arion for joining me. It's been a pleasure talking to you as always.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me back on.
Well, I mean, we'll be going through so much Manchester United football at the moment, and of course, those 2 games are going to almost finish the big run that United have got to get through, with Everton being the final hurdle before the international break. So we'll be talking about that next week. If you have any questions or any topics you'd like for us to discuss, please comment below on the YouTube video or on the Twitter or Facebook polls. And if you enjoyed this, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on Twitter for all of our content.